Welcome back to Your Average Investor. Today I'm going to show you how somebody could control the entire float of Big Lots stock with less than $15 million. That's right. All you would need is $15 million. You can control the entire float. This reminds me a lot of the Volkswagen short squeeze that happened a number of years ago that they actually did through option contracts. So here's what's been going on with Big Lots is they've been just struggling the last long while, right? $73 all the way down to $1.76. I mean, that's just nuts. But this last earnings, I was watching it just before earnings. I said, I want to wait till after earnings before I buy in. And sure enough, it came down. I was hoping it would base here and I'd buy in the 2.4s. It didn't base, it broke down further. It looks like maybe it's starting to base down here at like 175 or so. It's not quite long enough of a base to say for sure, but here's where the risk reward gets really interesting in my mind is obviously if the company goes bankrupt, the most you can lose is 100%. And you can see here I've added this to the challenge account. I've got now 100 shares as well as a long dated call option, and I've actually added more in my personal accounts too. I'm just showing the challenge account for this video though. So I have a significantly larger position than this, but here's what I'm looking at, right? If you want to take Big Lots, first thing, if you're looking for potential short squeeze, turnarounds, whatever, you need to know a few things. One is what's the float, what's the short interest. So right now the float is 28 million shares, a little more than 28 million shares, right? So I'm going to go here, 28 million shares. Now, the short interest on that is almost 30%. We're sitting at 28% short interest, but here's where it gets really interesting. Right here. Institutional ownership as of the last reporting, which was, there's going to be a new report out in a few days, but it was at 60%. 60% institutional ownership, which means of these 28 million shares, there's only 40% of them available for retail traders, for anyone that's not an institution, right? Which means that's 11,200,000 shares available. Now, if you wanted to, at current prices, you could just be like, oh, I'm just going to buy it at the current prices and I'll buy all 11 million shares and, have a party. And yeah, you could do that. But it gets even more interesting when you start looking at the option contracts. Remember, an option contract gives you the option to purchase 100 shares of a company at a predetermined price. So what's interesting about that is that, let's just say how many shares are available, and I'm going to divide that by 100. And this is going to tell me how many option contracts it would take to control the entire available float. So I'm going to go ahead and do that calculation. That leaves me with 112,000 contracts. Now, if you wanted to not take out the institutional ownership, then you could do this calculation without that. But the reason I'm doing it this way is because market makers, when your options are exercised, market makers have to deliver the shares. Right? They have to be able to deliver them. And more likely than not, the institutional ownership is going to remain roughly the same. It might go up and down a little bit, but it's going to remain roughly the same. And so they're not going to be selling their shares. Like when you buy option contracts and have them exercise or buy shares, you're not buying them from the institution, you're buying it from the market maker. So there's, that's why I'm using that as a metric. There's roughly 11 million shares that they can buy and sell to people, and that is controlled with 112,000 option contracts. The next question is, how expensive are these option contracts, right? Obviously, if you go 20 days out, these are dirt cheap. But even still, these are in the money right now, right? A call 1.5 is 25 cents in the money right now. A call 1, and that's $1 in the money. So let's just pretend for a second. We're going to use this number of 112,000, and let's just pretend you bought as many of these call 1s as you could. You just bought them at the ask at $85 a piece. Well, timesing that by 85, you get $9.5 million. It's a lot of money, but it's not like a lot of money, right? Like Roaring Kitty has something like I don't know what it was, like a $300 million position or a $500 million position in GameStop. $9 million in option contracts here controls the entire float of Big Lots, and these are in the money contracts. Well, let's say you wanted to buy yourself a little more time, right? So let's go like 3 months, 4 months out. And let's say you wanted to buy out of the money contracts, or you could do in the money too. Look at these in the money. Oh my gosh, look at that. wait a second, you got these call ones that are going for 85 bucks, and then you've got these call ones going for $90. You could even do something like this. You could buy these, and then you could sell that. I mean, that's not a great play because these are in the money, so you'd have to deliver, but you have this to bank it on, and that's only going to cost you $8. That's nuts. But let's just say you wanted to go out of the money, right? So let's say you wanted to buy these call twos, or you could go maybe not as far out of the money with those call. So we're going to go 112,000, these call 1.5s, and you're just going to buy them at 55 bucks a pop. That only costs $6 million. Or, again, if you wanted to go out of the money, which these ones don't have to be hedged all the way, but they do have to be hedged partially by the market makers. Let's say you're buying those for 35 bucks. That only takes $4 million. That's nutty to think about. You could go all the way out. This is where I decided to buy my contracts about the call twos, 50 bucks a pop here, right? So 112,000 for our final calculation times 50, $6 million to own the entire available float of Big Lots. Now, I said in the intro of this video, less than $15 million. And the reason I said that is because if you wanted to not take out the institutional ownership, right, and you just wanted to use the actual float of 28 million, so we're just going to go 28 million divided by 100 times 50, that's $14 million. So under $15 million, you now control the entire float of Big Lots stock just with those option contracts. 15 million bucks, the entire float, including 100% of institutions float, right? You know that those shares aren't out there. So now we know there's 30% short interest. There's 60% locked up by institutions, which means really, minus the short interest, there's 10% of the float left. And these option contracts are dirt cheap all around the board, especially these long dated ones. Like, if you're thinking that there's a turnaround, it's probably going to happen within the next year or two, or otherwise it goes bankrupt, right? So it's like, I would just buy. I mean, this is not investment advice, nor is it any advice for you personally. I'm just talking out loud here, but this is kind of nutty. So I come in, I buy 100,000 of these contracts here, and I own virtually the entire available float of Big Lots. I don't know any other way to look at it. Is my math wrong here? You guys are going to have to let me know in my comments. Like, did I do something wrong with my math? And I know that if you're buying out of the money contracts, they don't have to be hedged one-to-one with shares. Especially if they're far out of the money, they're not hedged one-to-one. But they do have to be partially hedged. And as they're partially hedged, it will drive the price up. And as the price goes up and it gets closer to in the money, they have to be hedged even more. And if it gets too deep in the money, then they have to be hedged one-to-one. Otherwise, right, there's going to be, they don't, I know there's corruption, there's fake shares, whatever, but theoretically they're supposed to be hedged one-to-one. And then, of course, if I'm exercising my in-the-money contracts, which at that point it would take a lot more money, of course, because you're choosing to buy 28 million shares at $2 a share, which there wouldn't be 28 million available. And again, the other thing that's weird about this, I'm pretty sure if you want to own more than 15% of a company or 18%, you have to start registering with the SEC and file as an insider. And like you have different privileges that are then given you. But so I wonder if there's like some sort of rule with call options. Like if you own so many call options that exercising them would give you more than 15%, do you have to, disclose that or something like that? But I mean, gosh, this is really interesting. Like just imagine what would happen, right? You only need 112,000 contracts, and let's just say everyone came in and bought. There's a bunch of people. Let's just pretend this happened. A bunch of people came in and bought these call ones that are deep in the money and they don't expire for another 200 days, and they bought them for $100 a pop roughly. And let's say everybody bought 5 of them. How many people would you need? You'd need 22,000 people to buy 5 of these, and those 22,000 people would own the entire available float. I'm trying to think, is like, obviously the flaw to this is that no whale comes in and starts buying, right? That's the flaw. If there's no turnaround story, the only way that this goes up is if some whale comes in and starts buying. But if there is a turnaround story, well then, man, things start looking really interesting. I don't know if I believe in the turnaround story so much as I believe this is an opportunity in the market. And I think somebody with more money than me, that's smarter than me, is going to hunt this out and go, oh my gosh, look at that opportunity. I'm just going to squeeze the shorts, make a little bit of money. That's what I think could happen. So, hope you guys enjoyed the video. Drop that subscribe, hit that subscribe, drop that comment. Let me know, do you own any shares of Big Lots? How many shares do you own? Catch you next time.